All right, we are live in 3, 2, 1, action.
Good evening. This is Wednesday, February 3rd, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion to open the meeting, please?
All right,
Greg, I lost Greg's audio. I don't know if he was trying to tell me something important, but can we have a motion to open the meeting, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, and we will be moving into executive session. The Hendrick Hudson School District Board of Education will convene executive session for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Can I have a motion to move into exec, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, so for the public, we will be moving into executive session. We should be back on this Zoom call at approximately 7 p.m. Thank you.
Greg, I have a new computer. I just want to make sure it works. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you, Tom.
All right, good. So I'm going to unmute it now and I'll be hanging around. Thank you.
Sure. And we're just live, so you can hang around and mute your video and your audio until the board returns.
That's what I'll do. Thanks.
No problem. Carol, we are live whenever you want to resume.
Alrighty, hang on one sec. Let me make sure everybody is here. There's Lori, there's Pam. Okay. All right, I think we can go ahead. Yes, okay. Good
Yeah.
evening. Oop. Okay, good evening. Today is Wednesday, February 3rd, and this is the Hendrick Hudson School Board of Education meeting. We are already in session, but I would like to start the public portion of the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Greg, do we have a video for tonight? Yes, thank you.
Please stand as we recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Thank you so much. Joe, do you know who that was? That was a lovely recitation of the pledge.
Yes, that was, I believe her first name is Taylor Copus, and she is a student at BV. And every day at BV, they have different kids that do the announcements and the pledge. And sometimes students do it who are participating in our in-person program. And sometimes kids who are home remote are also able to send in a video. So it's very exciting.
Very nice, thank you. All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated?
So moved.
Can I get a second,
Second.
please? All in
Second.
favor? Thank you, Alex.
Aye.
Aye. Does anybody have any items they would like to pull from the consent agenda this evening? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We did have one item pulled from the consent agenda, and that is the acceptance of a donation. This is actually a correction from a donation that we approved last week. It is a donation totaling $1,063.65 from the HHCEF for Chromebook styluses and gumdrop Chromebook cases. So can I get a motion to approve this donation, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And that brings us to our superintendent's report.
Okay, I'm going to start with our athletic director, Tom Baker is with us. He's going to present the overview of the budget, the athletic budget for next year. But we've had a lot of activity from the governor's office to New York State, all the way down to Westchester County and individual school districts in terms of preparing for another sports season, and a lot of red tape and a lot of really important steps for all school districts to take in order to ensure student safety with high-risk sports. High-risk sports include cheer and basketball, football, wrestling, and some others. The details and the I's that we need to dot and T's that we need to cross are slowly making their way down to us. And I wanted to give Tom an opportunity to give the board and the community a quick rundown of where we are and our anticipated return to play. So Tom, go ahead.
All right, thank you. So as you said, there has been a lot of information that has come our way in terms of athletics. To give you the timeline, on Friday, January 22nd, Governor Cuomo authorized the local departments of health as of February 1st to authorize the beginning of high-risk sports. Right now, where we stand for the winter season, our low-risk sports began on Wednesday, January 6th. That included gymnastics, boys swimming, skiing, bowling, and winter track and field. So they've been going since January 6th. The sports that have not been granted the authorization to begin were boys and girls basketball, wrestling, cheerleading, and ice hockey. So when Governor Cuomo transferred the authorization to the local departments of health, there has been a lot of information in the media and a lot of uneasiness and anxieties amongst our athletes just ready to go. We're ready. I've been writing COVID protocols since the summer. We have sport-specific ones for these sports. I ran them through Dr. Sultran, our school district medical director. So as Mr. Hochreiter said, the last 48 hours have just been a whirlwind of information coming our way. We were hoping to get going this week, but when we were granted verbal authorization from the Department of Health on Monday during the nor'easter, and when districts sat back and took the information in and saw that there were further protocols coming, it just wasn't prudent to start without the protocols. The protocols came our way last night at 8:04 to the superintendents, and by 8:05, it was in my hands from Mr. Hochreiter, and the planning began. So as he said, there's a lot of red tape, a lot of crossing of the T's, dotting of the I's of a lot of various protocols. Even as late as this afternoon, the Department of Health held meetings with various superintendents, various athletic directors, and information is still coming our way. So the end is near. I really firmly believe we're going to get there. We just have some protocols that are not so easily met over a day or two. It's going to take us some time. There's also some clarifications we're waiting on from the Department of Health as well. So these kids are ready to go. I mean, we've continued with our off-season workouts, which are still authorized. I mean, this afternoon, some of the kids that were hoping to start officially were there in an off-season capacity. So hopefully those sports can get going. The fall 2 season is slated to begin on March 8th, and those high-risk sports are football and volleyball and cheerleading as well for that season. The only other high-risk sport down the line is in the spring is boys lacrosse. So if we get the authorization to begin them all, we have our COVID protocols ready to go. We'll continue to do all of our daily protocols daily, but our kids are excited to hopefully get back in an official capacity. That I know for sure in speaking with them and seeing many of them. So I try to do my best to summarize it, but a lot of information has come our way, and that's where we stand right now as of 7:21 tonight. And we could get information in the midst of this meeting that we have to address and deal with tonight and tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Tom. There's a lot. I know there's a lot of information coming out. We've been getting the emails as parents in the high school about the sports starting, and it seems like the rules are changing on you almost every day, which just makes things incredibly difficult. I see Lori laughing because she knows it's true. Does anybody have any questions for Tom? All right, thank you so much for the update. I hope these students get a chance to play their chosen sport soon and in a safe manner.
Yeah, we're all hoping so. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to give a brief update on our deliberations regarding the potential adoption of the Princeton plan. About every board meeting, every opportunity I have, I try to give a status report. So here's where we are. As many of you know, we have a stakeholder committee comprised of staff, parents, and community members. In the beginning of January, earlier in January, those parents and community members had an opportunity to go on virtual field trips and speak with other parents and teachers and administrators in Somers, Ossining, and Terrytown. Those are 3 districts in our immediate area that are organized in a Princeton plan, basically by grade level. Elementary students go through different elementary schools by grade level rather than by neighborhood. Those meetings, I think were really informative, really fruitful. We're very thankful to Ossining, Terrytown, and Somers for spending a lot of time with us. I think across the 3 school districts, we had about 7 or 8 meetings, all lasting well over an hour. So thank you to those districts. Obviously, those conversations resulted in more questions. So last week, we emailed stakeholder group members and asked them to identify further questions that they had so we could go back to those 3 school districts or other school districts to have a little more conversation with greater breadth and depth. So we are compiling those questions from the stakeholder committee. We will arrange for further conversations so that their questions can be answered, and so their concerns can be allayed, or they can feel better about their position on whether the Princeton plan is a good thing or perhaps not a good thing for our community. At the same time, Margaret and Lisa are leading similar conversations with our staff. They have arranged meetings with our elementary principals, with principals of other schools. Our grade level leaders will begin conversations with teachers of similar grade levels or just elementary teachers in those other districts. Those conversations are a little more technical in nature, as our stakeholder group was talking about bus runs and PTAs and transitions. The conversations we're having with our staff are really about common planning time and the ability to move students around within the grade level based on opportunities for enrichment or remediation, or how AIS works, and this level of specificity in terms of transition plans. So over the next few weeks, we hope to wrap up that next layer of dialogue, and then we'll bring the stakeholder committee back together. And basically, the conversation is going to be around what we learned through the lens of a SWOT analysis. And it's basically a decision-making concept that our Board of Education has used each of the last number of years in our Board of Education retreat. And SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And basically, it will be a conversation with the large group, and then I envision some breakout groups saying, okay, what are the strengths of adopting the Princeton plan? What are some of the weaknesses? What opportunities would adopting the Princeton plan bring to our school district, and what threats would it create? I envision that a summary document would be put together by John McCarthy, who's our facilitator for this process. He also would highlight basically all of the work and all of the opportunities committee members had to collaborate with other school districts. So there was an understanding of where we were and the pathway we took to get to the SWOT analysis. It's not an up or down vote. It's not I agree with it, I disagree, or do it yesterday or never do it. It's basically providing feedback to the board around strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. Not to oversimplify the process, but it's very important that the public understands that our elementary attendance zones are based on Board of Education policy. All right. We have a Board of Education policy that identifies that students in certain neighborhoods attend certain elementary schools. If the board were to approve moving to the Princeton plan at any point, it doesn't matter, just we're going to go to the Princeton plan. The most technical change that the board would need to do would be to amend that policy. And rather than have the policy read that students attend elementary schools by their neighborhood or by their where their home is, they would attend an elementary school by grade level. So that's typically the process. And folks were interested to know, what is the decision and how do we get to a decision? So that's part of the pathway. It's also important I underscore that 2 weeks ago, we had a conversation here at our board meeting where I talked about the financials of the Princeton plan, and that basically the Princeton plan is a more efficient way of staffing your elementary schools because you need fewer staff members to deliver that instructional program. And we shared some of our spreadsheets with the board and community 2 weeks ago. Margaret and I are on tour sharing that spreadsheet and discussing it with all 3 elementary schools. We had a meeting already at Furnace Woods, and next week we will meet with Frank G and BV to do a Q&A around that document. And members of the stakeholder committee also have 6 opportunities to meet with me to have a Q&A session about that document. And we've already had 2 meetings, one last week and one earlier this week. So We're trying to get people to understand the math and the finances behind how does a Princeton plan save millions of dollars. Now, with that comes a potential, or what the Princeton plan calls for, is a reduction in staff. And a reduction in staff happens a couple ways. It happens through people who retire or leave the district, which we have regularly. And another way that you reduce staff is through layoffs. And the way that layoffs work, and it's not a Hendrick Hudson rule, it's not a Westchester rule, it's a New York State rule for public schools and municipalities, that your job security is based on your seniority. It's known as last in, first out. It is not a performance-based metric. It's not based on any sort of evaluative criteria. It is all based on your seniority. It's based on how many years of service, or months, or even weeks and days. How long of a service have you given to the school district? And we have seniority lists. Laura Nyer and Enrique have seniority lists for their respective departments. They meet regularly with the various unions to go over those seniority lists. And not to oversimplify it, but that is how we would reduce staff if we don't have the requisite number of staff that would retire or resign. It's also important to underscore, going back to 2 weeks ago, that we talked about two groups of staff members that make up the potential reductions that generate the savings. One group are the elementary teachers. These are classroom teachers that teach kindergarten through 5th grade. And another group of people are related service providers or special area teachers. These are art, music, special ed, ENL, phys ed, reading teachers. Those teachers are organized, and they're organized at a K-12 level. Their seniority is they can work in any part of our organization because New York State has given them a certification to work K-12. The elementary teachers are only certified for the most part to work kindergarten through 6th grade. All right. So if the Princeton plan calls for a reduction of a special education teacher, that special education teacher, the least senior special education teacher, may not be an elementary special education teacher. That person could be a middle school teacher. So that position gets eliminated, and we reshuffle the staff, and someone else would move to that middle school position. For example, if the Princeton plan called for a reduction of a reading teacher, same thing. Reading teachers are certified K-12. They accrue their seniority K-12. So the least senior reading teacher may not work in an elementary school, may work at the high school, so on and so forth. So it's important to underscore that those are not my rules or the board's rules. Those are New York State rules, New York State Education Department, and also in all public municipalities in New York State. So if you work for the town or the city or the county government, your job security is based on your seniority within your certification, or in that case, within your title. So some really important distinctions I want to make sure that that everyone understands. And I'll leave it at that because I know we have a few presentations.
Thank you, Joe. Do you have a date when we're going to get the SWOT analysis done? When are we expecting to see that? And are we going to have that at a regular board meeting, or are we going to do a special board meeting just to discuss that SWOT analysis?
Yeah, so the estimated timeline is really contingent on how quickly we can get through our next information phase. So for example, of the maybe 24 parents and community members who participated, we sent out a survey, as I said, last week for more questions. As of this morning, we only had one individual asking questions, so I sent the survey again to remind folks. So once some more results are trickling in, we'll schedule those meetings, and then we'll bring the group together likely at the end of February. So our hope is that if we can bring the group together at the end of February, it would be toward the end of the month or very early March. We would be able to provide the board basically with a 30,000-foot overview of those 4 categories: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. as we explore the potential implementation of the Princeton plan. Now, with any SWOT analysis, the discussion will be, can we overcome any of the weaknesses, or how would we remedy some of them? And do the opportunities outweigh the potential threats? Because we do want to be forward looking. We want to not just solve a budget issue for this year, but we want to make sure that we have a robust program, for the next 10, 20, 50 years. So the question is, do the opportunities outweigh the threats, and how can we try to limit any of the threats to make sure that they don't become part of the new potential system? So that would be a discussion that we would have with the board. And our team would be able to weigh in on different strategies that we can employ, or different programs or resources we could use to tamper down the weaknesses and the threats, just like we did in any number of our last few years of retreats, as we talked about how to contend with Indian Point closing. Long-winded answer to say no later than early to mid-March, we'd be able to have that overview, and then certainly engage the public and talk to them about it and what this means, and opportunities or some concerns. But the meetings we had with the 3 other school districts were really enlightening, because it was 10 scripted questions that came from the committee. We fired through them as quickly as we could, and then had time for basically open mic Q&A. And it was a great opportunity for some of our parents to talk to parents in other districts, to either talk them off the ledge, or tell me all the secrets about this, or give me the headaches of having 2 kids in 2 different schools, and how does a PTA work, and how do you do band concerts. So there was a level of specificity in those meetings that I think were really important, and we hope to provide one more opportunity for a level of specific Q&A, so our folks can feel a little more knowledgeable of what the Princeton plan is.
Great, thank you. I know that we have a budget kind of, not deadline, but we had hoped to have time for the board to discuss this before we had to make any serious budgeting decisions. So it sounds like we're on track for that. I know we've been discussing this for a long time now, and I'm glad that the committee has had a chance to do this deeper dive into their questions. And I'm looking forward to hearing what their overview is. Does anybody have any questions for Joe? Lori, go ahead.
Just what we had suggested before, beside this committee, I would hope that we would put out a community survey to see how the community feels about doing this. I mean, people are very precious about their schools and their neighborhoods, etc. So I would really like a full community survey. And if you folks answer, you answer. If you don't, it's your own fault. So just, that's not to say one way or the other, but you have to participate. Okay. So if we put out a community survey, hopefully you take advantage of that and answer it. All right. Because that will be, we've been talking about this for a very, very, very long time. It's been communicated. So we're hoping that folks are listening, and that you take advantage of hopefully a survey that we put out that gets information just from more than just the committee. That's it.
Right. Part of having the stakeholder committee encompassing so many different aspects of the community, part of their mission was to also bring this information back to their various groups. So I hope that's being done, and that we're getting a wider exposure to this issue, because it is a very important one for our district. I certainly, as well, the leadership team has been discussing doing a community-wide Q&A type thing. And some less formal coffee chats with smaller groups if need be, as we get further along in the process. So that'd be great. Any other questions? Any other questions about anything else before we, Joe, did you have any more updates actually?
No, that
Okay.
was it. And we're going to just in light of some of the longer anticipated presentations we have, we were going to skip our round robin and go into the next phase, if that's okay.
Okay, which also reminds me, I just wanted to say when we do have our stakeholder report out, we'll be sure to make that a light meeting, if not an extra meeting, so that we can devote the time and attention to that topic that it deserves. Did anybody else have any questions for Joe or the team before we move on, since we're not doing the round robin? Any burning questions on your minds tonight? Okay, then that brings us to committee reports. I think Lisa had a committee report.
I do. Actually, I have two of them, unless Lori wants to take over with one of them. She and I were both on the safety committee.
You know what? They really kind of overlapped each other,
They did.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, Lise. Go ahead,
That's
baby.
The one different thing with the safety committee is that we're in the process of creating a public health emergency section to the safety plan. And this needs to be approved by April 1st, and there'll be a 30-day comment period prior to its approval. So just so all of us on the board and the district realize that this is going to be happening, this is a requirement that Governor Cuomo put in place, that all districts are going to be required to have this public health emergency section in their schools, in their district safety-wide plan. And so we're working on that. The other part of our safety committee meeting, which did dovetail onto the facilities, was just talking about, the updates on the construction projects and the bond project. And we had a really good meeting with our facilities committee where we got to see some pictures of the changes and the improvements that have been made with the auditoriums and the entranceways. And there's going to be a bigger presentation for everyone on the 24th of February, where we're going to get to really see in pictures and video more of an update as to what things are looking like then. But one of the key things that I wanted to make sure that we stressed was that specifically for those auditoriums, there were lighting consultants who came in and worked with Claire and worked with Anthony and the other people on that committee to really make sure that the lighting is the way we want it to be. It's the best way it can be. And same with the sound. There were sound consultants who came in and also rigging consultants. So they have all had the opportunity to weigh in and let us know if indeed things are working the way we want them to. And we've had a chance to make some tweaks and some changes to things. And they're going to come in one more time, I believe, before we're done. But things are really moving along well. There's just a little buttonhole, as Anthony likes to call them, things left to tidy up and to finish up. But it's exciting to see this starting to come to the final stages now. Yeah.
I just have one good question, Lisa. So was faculty involved then in making sure that, we made the auditorium the way it should be, like, focused on lighting, focused on sound. It sounds like safety issues.
We were told they were involved, right, Lise? We were told that they were
Yeah,
consulted.
I just wanted to double check and make sure, and
Yeah.
that the right people were involved.
Including the science rooms as well. They look beautiful and really nice. So I know some people are a little worried that it's not coming along. It really looks beautiful. Even Tommy, how do you like all the locker rooms and stuff like that?
They're going to be very nice for us over there. Yeah.
Yeah, all looks good.
Yeah, they really do look good.
I, for one, cannot wait to see the pictures.
They're really neat. And, we didn't have a whole lot to look at. I mean, there weren't tons of pictures. I would have liked to have seen even more than we saw, but it was great. It was really great to get that little preview, and there'll be more on the 24th.
Including the elevator and all the new doors. And
I'm excited for the lighting and sound system in the auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really looking good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
A lot to be proud of.
And the other thing I participated in was Westchester Putnam School Board Association had an advocacy meeting that was held just last night, or this morning, actually. It was a full day Capitol Conference thing. And we had just going over the plans for what to advocate for. And I'll be talking more about that later when we get to new business. But that's it.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any committee reports? The Finance Committee met during this portion of the year, I'll say. Mostly the Finance Committee meets about the presentations and asks last minute questions, gets clarification so that the presentations are as crisp and clear as they can be for the public as well. So I'm not going to make a separate Finance Committee report or ask anybody else to, because we will be seeing those presentations shortly. And that brings us to our presentations and discussions.
Okay, Greg, I don't know who won the coin flip to go first, but oh, Lisa and PPS. So yes, as Carol mentioned, we are certainly in the throes of our budget season, where department heads from our various programs come forward to the board and give an overview of their department, their financial and staffing needs for the following year. As we develop the big $80+ million budget, we go department by department and get into some very specific details. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Lisa, you're muted.
I was hoping you could read my lips. So Greg, I'm just going to tell you next when we're ready to go, if you go next. So I have prepared a budget for next year. This is us returning to school as normal. That's what we're all hoping for in the fall. This is based on our pre-COVID budget. So I'm going from this year's budget to next year's budget, and I'll explain that as we go further. So I always start with how many students do we have out of district? Currently this year we have 15. Next year we're anticipating 13. Hopefully 2 students will be graduating. I do have one that wants to graduate next January and another one that they're both out of district that would like to graduate next January. But that's all going to determine, be determined on their work. But that we definitely have 2 graduating, which will allow us to go down to 13 students out of district next year. So we are finding less and less students are going out of district and more are staying within our district, which is great because our programs are able to sustain the students we have within district. Majority of our students that are out of district are multiply disabled, and we don't have enough in a certain cohort to make a program within district. So it's going to be hard to bring all of those students back, but we're slowly bringing students back a little bit at a time, which is very exciting for us. Next. So right now, if we look at a 3-year trend, and it's hard for 21-22 to really talk about that year, but let's start with 19-20. So 19-20, we knew we had 100 K-5. We knew in 2021 that we started, that we currently have 131 K-5. Next year, it's going to be very hard to determine where we are. We have at least 40 CPSE kids. That's currently now. That doesn't mean between now and June, we won't get another 10 to 15 students classified as CPSE students coming in. We don't know how many of them will come into program and how many of them will come in as related service or how many will come in as declassified. Due to the fact of COVID, most of these students haven't had any related services or any services of program due to parents not taking advantage of teletherapies, and therapies are still not going into the homes. They're slowly opening. We did have a BOCES meeting about 2 weeks ago where BOCES shared, and our state representative, our school regional officer also shared with us that some of our community-based preschools may be going out of business, and districts will be responsible for implementing the IEPs in the 21-22 school year. So it's kind of scary for us because that's a lot of kids and a lot of IEPs when we think about 3 to 5-year-olds. And it's a lot of work with a lot less reimbursement than what our teachers are used to being paid and what we're used to paying people. So, and the reimbursement for the state is very little. That being said, we're talking about 140 students, and it could be anywhere up to 160, depending on where students are when they come in. However, several of our families are saying they're probably not going to send their students to kindergarten. They're going to quote unquote redshirt them and keep them out another year. If they do that, then students won't have services because if they don't continue through a program, services will be discontinued and parents will have to use their own insurances. School will not be responsible for them. Right now, I know 3 to 5 families that are not sending their students to kindergarten. We haven't looked at that in this number right now due to the fact that we want to make sure it's guaranteed. We still keep them on our list just to plan. We'll know better as the week after February break, we have set up with the Hendrick Hudson Free Library to do some screenings of students. So we have set up with at least 15 to 17 parents to bring their families in and our related service people, as well as our teachers. We'll be going to the Hen Hud Free Library. We've reserved rooms to do some assessments, to do some screenings, so we can at least know where these kids are. And we'll get some eyes on them and we'll get some hands on them. As you can see, the trend from 6 to 8, of course, is going up. It doesn't go up as dramatically as the K to 5, but it is increasing a little. And same to 9 to 12. So we're looking anywhere from the 3-year span of 297 up to at least 400 students, depending on where our CPSE students fall into play at that point. Any questions on that? Yes.
Alex?
Hi. Yep. So I haven't seen the data prior to 2019, but just looking at it, it seems like the trend seems significant. Is it not significant? Is it just that I don't have the background knowledge? But
Well,
it seems
your
like the
K
case.
to 5 really does look a lot. It is significant. Your 6 to 8 and your 9 to 12 really isn't significant because you had large pockets of kids. So you had a large group graduate last year and then a smaller group come in, but then you'll have a large group come in the following year. So it really depends on what band they're in. So the K to 5 though is huge for us. More and more kids, but you have to remember this last year we had 32 kids move in, majority of them were elementary and they came with IEPs. And COVID has really pushed us to a point of where we're really trying to educate families on, we don't go right to classification or 504, we're going to the RTI. And it's hard if you're choosing to keep your child remote, if we can evaluate them to really say there is a disability or there's not because they are remote. So K to 5 is a large group because you're going for anywhere from 100 to 140. But again, those are estimated numbers until we know really where our CPSE kids are. Because I could have told you last year, actually, I think it was in 19, we had 60 CPSE kids. Of those 60, only 15 came in with services that needed a program. The others were related services and went to building level.
Okay. So it's just
really, COVID is really hurting us, and it's hurting because the CPSE kids, if they don't go to a program, sometimes the providers go into the home, and parents are really, really scared about COVID.
okay. And I guess you'll talk about how this would impact the budget in the next couple of slides, whether we're at the lower end or the top end.
I will.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Yes, Lori.
Devil's advocate, and I'm sorry to say this, do we, in general, how do I want to say this?
Provide?
No, because I think we do an excellent job.
Okay.
I think we're among the top, I have to tell you.
I agree.
Do we overdiagnose in general, not just us? But do you think there are a lot of cases? Because like, you're right, this is a lot of kids. Are we finding that parents are saying, oh, my kid is this, or my kid is this? Like, are we going a little crazy, or
can I answer
that?
that?
Saying it nice. I don't mean
No, I
to,
know what
God
you're
forbid
saying.
these children need help, but you know what I mean.
Can I answer that in a couple slides? Remember
Yeah.
that in a couple slides, because that's going to help when we get to the budget piece. Okay. Okay. The next slide, please, Greg. So this is very tiny, and I'm sorry for those people that are having trouble seeing it, but there's a lot of information on this slide. It's a lot about programming. I do a lot of different things falling under the PPS. So I do tutoring, I do nursing services, I do the equipment. I try to help the buildings buy stuff for the special ed classrooms. I try to buy whatever we need for the students. That's really where it falls. All the OT, PT stuff falls under my budget. So I really want you to see this. So A few things that I will tell you is that you are going to see that the teachers' salaries have gone up by 5%, but have they really gone up by 5%? The answer is yes, because we had to add 2 new teachers due to COVID this year. We have not reduced any teachers in this budget as of yet, because I needed to add a new speech therapist because we have so many students that moved in. I need another speech therapist next year to actually provide for what we need. So there's no reduction in the teachers as of yet. That doesn't mean it won't happen as we move further down the line. We are able to reduce a lot of aides and assistants based on kids' IEPs as we move forward to the next year, because we already know we're reducing those services on their IEPs. We're slowly taking those services and giving them less and less throughout the year, working with the families and the classroom teachers. So we know eventually they're not going to be on the IEPs once June comes. So we've seen a reduction there. A lot of my lines have stayed zero for the last 2 to 3 years. I haven't had to increase them because we've been able to get what teachers needs equipment-wise, supply-wise, working in collaboration with the school principals. So our teachers, our related service people, our mental health people, they've gotten what they've needed. If they haven't been able to get it through the school, I find a way to get it for them within my budget. The lines that you're going to see the decrease in is where we send kids out of district. So we know kids are graduating, but we always have to keep that special spot, a few extra dollars in case we get 2 more kids that come in that need to go out of district, or we get a kid that moves from the middle school to the high school and just can't handle it, and I don't have a program. We have to be budget. We have to be ready to go. BOCES goes up every year if we want it to or not. It's just something that happens. And as I had said before, if we have multiple disabled students, we don't have the programs in district and we don't have the means to create them. If we have 3 or 4 kids in a cohort, that might be something we can do, collaborate with other districts, get some tuitions. That's another whole story. So when we think about all of this that's happening, we then have to say, how much is it, BOCES? I just flat out ask them, what percentage are you charging me next year? It helps me budget. I don't want to know how much each program is, just give me an overall percentage. So that's how we do that. Transportation goes up. If we're sending kids to Northern Westchester to Southern Westchester, we have to find different routes everywhere. Liz charges me, and it's all aidable though. So that'll be on another slide that I show you. We are getting aid back on that. So that does help us. But to answer Lori's question, as far as are we over servicing them? It's a very interesting conversation. Providing too much.
That's not what I mean.
Okay. Go ahead. Providing
I think the services we give are absolutely like,
yes,
they have to have what I'm saying, are we over diagnosing?
Oh, well, we don't diagnose, remember?
You know what I mean? I'm using wrong words.
Over classifying. Are we over classifying? That's the word. I will say.
I don't mean just us. I mean in general.
In general, I can't speak. I can speak to us. I know we've really asked parents to provide us with the documentation. We do ask. Margaret and I, in conjunction, have been working with buildings for the RTI process. I have an intern right now, Chris Marino. He's an elementary teacher going for his admin degree. And part of his admin degree is to do K-5 RTI to look at our process. So RTI, for those that don't know it, is the response to interventions. There's 3 levels of response. And the first is your classroom teacher doing some basic reteaching in the classroom. Then you have your level 2, your level 3. And then we start talking about, is special education needed? But there's a lot in place before you can get there. So to answer your question, Lori, yes and no, but it really depends on what we're talking about. I think sometimes in society right now with COVID, I think we're all so nervous about our child not learning because we're remote, and I have to be remote because my parents live with me, or I have a young child that we have to be remote, and parents get nervous because their child can't attend. I can't attend to the computer 6 hours a day. So, there's times where Joe will say to me, do you want to do it on the phone or computer? I'm like, the phone, please, because the computer is just too much sometimes. So you really have to think about that. So as a society, probably because of COVID. As a general, I think we're really good at saying, yes, you get services, and no, you don't need the services because you're accessing the curriculum. I know I've been the bad guy this year at least 3 meetings saying, you are accessing the curriculum. I understand you're stressed. How can we help you? Let's get you some building level counseling. From there, we'll get you some outside counseling. We'll get you to the right people. But I think that's one thing that I can't speak to general, but I can just speak to COVID terms. COVID, I think we're all stressed right now.
Can I ask a question a different way, Lisa?
Absolutely.
Do we think that maybe parents are better educated and have more awareness And maybe the fact that they're with their children more now during COVID, that maybe they're able to recognize the needs a little bit more. And that's why the numbers are going up.
It could definitely be that, but I'm also seeing parents that are feeling that their child can't attend. And again, I'm going to refer to the computer. If I'm on the computer this much, I can't attend. There's only so much you can. And then the anxiety that the computer is creating, because it's immediate, right? It's that immediate gratification, or it's that immediate notice that you have an assignment due.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden that anxiety builds up in the kids, and they haven't had that. Like when you leave period 1, you go to period 2 and you write down your homework. It's due in 2 days. You go to period 2. You don't have that same anxiety because you forgot period 1 already. You already wrote it in your planner, or you put it in your notebook, or you put it on your phone. Now it's going from one to the other to the other. There is no get up and move and talk to your friends break, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah,
that anxiety is always there.
I kind of feel like the numbers are lower than I expected in the increase.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I would have thought, given everything going on, that you would have had a much higher number.
I'm not saying that we're not having higher referrals. That's not what I'm saying. But as far as do they fit the regulation requirements, that's a different story.
Right. Okay.
I can tell you that I've personally run, before Mr. Matera got here, I ran at least 3 or 4 initials that I know I did not classify and or give a 504 plan because they were accessing the curriculum. We just needed to do some building level supports for them.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
You got to look at the regulations and the definitions for the 504 accommodation plans.
Right.
It's very, very difficult at this time for all of us.
Yeah.
So where I was going to go with this is really our service piece of it. I think is, I'm going to go off what Lori said. We have amazing services here. What we do really, really well is support our families and our students. What we now need to practice is how do we take that and help our juniors and seniors become more independent? Because I'm finding as our juniors and seniors, and this is one of our indicators next year, go off to college, they're not really doing a lot because they're used to that ICT model all the time. So this year we started the indirect consultant teacher model, the consultant teacher model in English 12, and we'll be starting it in the middle school for social studies and science in 7th and 8th grade. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 8th grade science, though, will be in ICT because it is a Regents level class. So we're starting some independence as they start to transition. When they hit 9th and 10th grade, it's such a transition year and it's such a new year for kids. We aren't going to go to the indirect yet. It's going to be more juniors and seniors, but we're working on it. And next year will be the introductory piece to that. So I know Mr. Matera ran his first middle school meetings today, and it went over well with the parents. So we're just going to continue on that route, see how that goes. But we really have to start getting, our next goal needs to be, how do we make our kids a little bit more independent as they prep for high school, college and or the workforce and or a vocational school, wherever they plan on going. So that's our next level of special ed. Lisa.
Yeah, you're using some terminology that I'm not familiar with. And I was just wondering if you could help me understand that when you're talking about direct teaching model, what is that? Can you?
So part of the least restrictive environment. So resource room, of course, is the least restrictive, because resource room kids go there like during a study hall period, right? So that they're not removed from the regular classroom. So indirect consultant teacher means that they can work 120 minutes a week with the classroom teacher. They could, if they have time in their schedule, which we are building into the middle school schedule, they have time to go into the classroom, see how the child's doing. They modify the test, they modify the classroom work, they may modify homework, they may modify a reading. So that's what the indirect is. A direct consultant, they could go into the classroom like every other day, as long as it's 120 minutes a week. So that's what those two phrases mean, indirect and direct. So indirect doesn't mean they're always working with the student. Direct means you're working with the student. The other option you have with indirect is you can actually use a really cool model that Lori will know, because Elmsford uses it quite well, is they have a teaching assistant and a teacher. So they switch. So Monday is the teacher, Tuesday is teaching assistant, Wednesday is the teacher, Thursday is the teaching assistant. So it's an every other day thing. So there's many models to look out there and they're all successful. We're going to find out which works best for our district and our kids.
Thank you. That really helps a lot.
If I'm using, please stop my terminology because it's such second nature to me. and I'm just so used to doing it. So, all right, next. So this is where we're going next year. We're really looking at the direct and indirect consultant teacher at the middle school and high school. The implementation, so DBT has been very successful. We kicked it off. Obviously, it's been in the middle of school and high school, but we kicked it off the elementary this year. And I have to tell you, for a team that's so new, because they are a brand new team to each other, it has just gone amazingly well. Dr. Walker and I meet probably once a month. We talk on the phone to talk about the initiatives and how each building is doing. And she has been just so excited how well the elementary is going. So the elementary will go to second year of implementation. They've really started with their groups were up and running. They were getting kids together. They were doing some touching bases with staff. Secondary has started talking to staff and teaching, especially at the middle school, teaching some of the DBT language to the staff. They're going to start doing videos and including some parents and getting it up on the website. And that's what our goal is for the secondary K 6 through 12 next year, is to get some sort of implementation of parents. So parents are now hearing about this and they can now utilize this at home. We've started our little 4 times a year presentations for families, those little mini sessions for an hour. This I'm hoping to do regularly once a month to throw up on the website. Parents can hear about, this is what we're doing in DBT this month. Here's a new strategy, whether it's a breathing strategy, whether it's using ice on your neck when you really have to take that time, accounting strategy, meditation, which I'm horrible at. I'm still trying to get there, but I cannot do it. Things to that nature. So that's really what we're working on. And going hand in hand with that is a consulting psychiatrist. You know, as I had said earlier, we're talking about COVID, we're talking about stress, we're talking about anxiety. I had a parent call me, whatever the last day, it seems like we were in school last week, and said, listen, my daughter has OCD, she has this, she just can't fathom going back into that school. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? So we really talked about strategies. We talked about different things that we could do to help her, but we want the psychiatrist on call for us, but we also want them to meet with our mental health team. So we're going to bring the psychiatrist. They will do virtual meetings with each one of our levels. So a middle school, a high school, and an elementary, once a month for an hour. They will meet with us. They will talk about strategies. We'll talk about specific cases with them. They will problem solve. So these are people that have had the experience, that are in the field, that work with children and adolescents. So we're really excited that BOCES has helped us find somebody that we can start utilizing. We met with them. My small team that could meet on Monday during our snow day, we got on for an hour and we were able to speak to someone from Columbia University. And they are on board with us, and we are going to start using them after February break as a trial to see how it goes and see what else we need from them. So we're very excited to bring them on board this year and really utilize them next year. So those are our goals for next year. We'll start a little early this year for our psychiatrist though. Next, please. So this is where we get some money to help us pay for all of this stuff. So we have our CPSE grant was our 619, not a lot of money. I can't even tell you what the totals are for next year. I've estimated them. That's $21,000. That's used for paying for our CPSE programs and our staff, which would be our CPSE secretary pays for some of her salary. Our 611 pays for a lot of our salaries. We designate that only to salaries with some little things that we have to pay for, which is some SEDCAR money, which is some money that the state doesn't pick up that we're required to pay for. So we pay for it out of there, and some purchase services from BOCES. This year, Margaret and I teamed up for a work-based learning coordinator, which didn't happen. So I budgeted for it, and I wrote it into my grant because we could do it with special ed and gen ed kids as a mix, and it didn't happen. So I can take that rollover money, and what I think I'm going to use it for the summer is like a boot camp for our CPSE kids, so we can kind of get some testing and see where the rest of those kids are. So that's what we will utilize that money for. Our STAC money, which is our money that I talked about with reimbursement. Don't ask me what STAC is, Lisa, because I don't know. It's just the state reimbursement fund. I do know that. I work with Questar BOCES, and we give them all of our kids that go to program. We get a percentage of that back. Typically, it's about 38%. And we get that back from our state, and we're anticipated about $201,000. I know they gave me like a hint that we'll get a March payment, but they're saying they're not sure what happens after March, and it kind of shocked me. So I'm getting everything done that I can before March so we can get as much money as we can from them. Our tuition from ABC is about 710,000, almost 711, anticipating the same amount next year because we're not really sure how many kids we'll have. I will tell you our ABC classes, based on the students that we currently have, based on our incoming students, we will have one open slot, and that will be one slot at the middle school. The rest of our K to 12 classes will be full. We won't have any space to take any more tuition kids except for that one spot due to the number of kids we have in program already. So that's pretty full. And then we have a couple kids in our ICT or special classes in the middle school that come to us from other districts, that their tuition and the related services, that adds up to about $169,000. Any questions there? If we do go to Princeton plan, this is one thing that I shared with Joe, is that we could take our 12-1-1 classes and split them up and allow more space for tuition kids, because we do have a couple kids that do come to our 12-1-1 classes, and those are classes that most of those students will eventually get into an ICT class and hopefully just end on a track of a general diploma versus alternately assessed, like our ABC kids that will go for the credential versus a typical diploma. So that would be an option with Princeton plan if we do go that way as well. Next slide, please. So this is how we break down up our grants, and I kind of already spoke about that. So we do a lot of the purchase services really is paying for those county level and state level special ed programs. So that's how we use the money. A lot of our 611 actually supplements our special ed teachers or related, anybody that works 100% with special ed, we can put their salaries in that grant. Next, please. Any other questions? I know I answered a lot while we were talking, but are there any other questions I can answer for you?
Looks like you covered everything, Lisa. Somehow it does not surprise me that you have trouble with meditation.
Really?
I wish I had 1/4 of your energy. Yeah.
Well, I was sitting on a DBT meeting with high school, and I realized I wasn't muted, and I was doing 3 things. And someone said, I won't mention any names, but someone was clicking a pen. I'm like, no, it was my keyboard. It was me. I admit it. So, yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. It was a very thorough presentation. I'm so glad we're able to service so many of our students in-house and not have to send them out. That's great for them because they get to know more of their community members and their, friends that live locally, things like that. And of course, the commutes are much shorter. So yeah, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom Baker, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Yes, I'll do the same thing, Greg. When I'm ready for next, I'll just go. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll get going here. So typically, I start off with some of the success that we've had this year. So we always kind of hover around our 54 to 56% participation rate, and then this number was drawn from the last 3 full seasons we had of winter, fall, and spring. Our GPAs of our athletes continue to be higher than non-athlete. This past fall, we had several New York State Scholar Athlete teams. We had another Con Ed Award winner this past fall, is Oldie McManus of the girls cross country team. League champion and sectional champion. If you haven't had an opportunity to see our Putnam Northern Westchester Section 1 girls cross country team, they are a true delight and a very rewarding team to watch. Coach Bailey has had this group of girls, some of them as early as back in 7th and 8th grade. Seeing them train daily as a young group of girls, and their leadership and their bond and chemistry together, it's phenomenal. And the fact that they won a Section 1 championship this past fall was indicative of their hard work that they have really been putting in for several years. So hopefully we can carry that over to a winter track and a spring track and field season, but they're truly a talented group, our girls cross country sectional team. Two of the items that I'm really most proud of this year are the fact that we conducted and completed a successful fall season, and we're currently conducting successful off-season workouts. It's challenging with COVID, but it's being done, and it's being done every day. I really am thankful for our coaching staff, the coaches that are coming in on the off-season workouts every day after school. We're there 3 o'clock, sometimes till 9 o'clock at night on certain evenings, and they're there giving up their time for our kids that are, to do something productive for the off-season workouts. And then, as I said earlier in the meeting, hopefully these off-season workouts will translate very soon into official practices, and I'm feeling very optimistic about that. I think we do a really good job in our district of promoting our athletes and our programs. We have coaches that are always willing to nominate kids for various coaching association awards, and their work with, as I said earlier, the Con Ed awards and our various teams being put up for community service awards. We do a really good job of that, and it's really highlighting the good work that our student athletes do on and off the field. So I think I speak for all of them. We're proud of that, of what they do there. So I'll take next, Greg. So getting into our projected our budget for next year, as Lisa said, this budget is also planned for a normal year, which will hopefully we will return to in the 21-22 school year. So the first slide here are contractual lines: the coaching salaries, the staff salaries, and overtime. The coaching salaries, it's a little more than 2%. It's based, and the reason why is because of there's changes in specific positions and different steps, but that's a contractual step, a contractual obligation of where we will land with next year. Staff salaries, again, are a contractual obligation. We will reduce the overtime a little bit there. We only come up with certain aspects of overtime. Sometimes in the summer when specific jobs need to get done, we'll have to get those done there if it's outside of the regular day. So this slide represents where we are, where we will be for our contractual lines. I'll go to the next one, Greg. So here for our non-salary lines, and I'll go through them all, and then the two increases I'll make sure I speak with a little bit more. But the first three lines, our equipment, supplies, and contractual, those are our three lines that we deal with basically daily in the athletic office. I tried to reduce the three of them to be able to internally handle the next two increases that we need. I also can handle some of the decreases there based on some of the inventory that we can hold on to for next year that we had prepared for this year, but for COVID-related reasons, we didn't use it, so we can handle the reductions there, specifically in the supplies area and the equipment area for that matter. But BOCES has a significant increase, and as Lisa alluded to in her presentation, there are increases in BOCES that we just can't control, and we have to handle them. The largest increase in this BOCES line, the $31,000 increase, really goes towards the officials contract. Next year, we will have a full year of the brand new officials contract, and we're obligated to pay them for their officiating at the varsity, JV, freshman, and modified. And it's a contractual agreement that BOCES enters in with them, and a large chunk of our BOCES line goes towards our officials payments. The other increase that will be in here will be the one program that we were able to internally pick up this year, and that's the live streaming capabilities of the local live is what we call it. It's a local live service is the name of the company that does it. It's the live streaming capabilities. We have two cameras right now. We have one on our main field on the turf and one in the gymnasium. This past fall, with the limited amount of spectators we were allowed in, the capabilities to live stream them was really advantageous for our entire community. I kind of get my TV ratings after every athletic event on the main field, because immediately at the end of the event, I will get an update from the local live company with how many viewers were on there. I said to the finance committee the other night, one of our events this year took over 1,200 views, and I got so many emails from the company stating that they never had gotten such a high number in a viewing for them. So I think it's something that our community has very much appreciated. With hopefully we transition to an official gym winter season, where in the gymnasium we'll have another camera. Again, there's going to be limited spectators immediately here in the winter season as we transition to the COVID high-risk winter season. So that need in the gymnasium will be there as well. But moving forward, any event we have on the main field, it could be any event, whether it's elementary school, middle school, high school, extracurricular activity for a particular club in the gymnasium or the main field. We have the capabilities now to live stream that. It does not have to be an athletic event. So, for instance, one of the biggest fundraisers our PTSA works with at the high school is the senior fashion show. When that returns in a live capacity, we will be able to streamline that from the gymnasium. So that's the biggest part of the increase in the BOCES. The other large increase that you see is for chaperones. As I said the other night at finance, the number that I'm projecting of about 65,000, that's been the actual number. The last few years, I've had to internally transfer money from different lines to handle that. So I think we need to prepare accordingly for that. The last few years, we've been very successful in a lot of sports. And success brings two things. It brings more games and more fans. And when you have those two things, you need more chaperones. The biggest example I can give you is last year when our girls basketball team won the Class A Section 1 championship. It brought with us 2 extra home games that we had to supply a full chaperone staff. And both of those games were against highly emotional rivalry games. We played our local Walter Panis in one game, and that again came with a large crowd on both ends. When we played 2 games at the county center, the semifinals and the finals, we had to bring 4 chaperones to that game. And again, high impact game, large crowd, a lot of emotions. It was necessary. So the more success we have, that's the reality of where we are at. The 2 final lines, the transportation line and the overtime lines, I worked with Liz Gillio and Anthony Merlini, and we will just hold the line on that and do whatever's necessary in terms of internally keeping those numbers where they're at. So this gives us the snapshot of all the non-salary budget lines that we had to go. So I guess if there's any questions now in regards to those, is there any questions that I have for this? All right, I will go to the next one then, Greg. This culminates the contractual and the non-contractual pieces. So the 3.9% difference really comes from those 2 pieces that I had just spoken about with the BOCES and the chaperone. But the BOCES is the largest one, and it's really out of our control. And I will speak a little bit more detailed on the next few slides. So I'll go to the next one, Greg. So I added the slide in here, and I wanted to give a snapshot of the COVID impact of where we are, but from a budgetary standpoint in athletics. So we have some unused funds from the 2021 school year, and the number that I was able to calculate in the last few days, the 40,546 is unused salary / stipends from modified sports. The modified fall season and the modified winter season have been canceled by Section 1. So those sports that you see there listed here on the slide, they are canceled. I was kind of hoping that for our student athletes' sake that some of them would be postponed and I'd be able to run them at a future point in the year, but they were canceled. The 2 remaining seasons, the fall 2 season, which will be football and volleyball from a modified standpoint, and a spring season, which is boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, baseball, softball, and spring track. Those right now from a Section 1 standpoint are TBD, to be determined. The reality is at the modified level, there are 2 huge challenges to run a modified program in COVID. The first challenge is the amount of students that are remote. Getting a middle school student back in the afternoon for 3:15 practice is not as practical as the high school student. So it's the remote virtual aspect. And then the second piece of that is transportation, is being able to, would we be in a position that we necessarily have to transport kids throughout the day to get them back for practices? So the practicality of running a modified program has presented challenges during COVID. So that's where we stand from that. There could be a potential for more unused funds, but the reality depends on what happens with the remaining part of our athletic schedule. We could get unused funds that are chaperones, officials, and future stipends. I talked to Mr. Catalan the last few days. At this point last year, the athletic department spent $580,000. Right now, where we're at the same point, we've only spent $225,000. So it just gives you an idea of where we're at. But a lot can change in the next few days, as I talked about earlier with the with the authorization and moving forward with some potential high-risk sports. So there's a lot of change that could happen, but otherwise there's the potential for some more unused funds. So I'll go to the next one. So we've had a lot of success. As I keep saying, we really do a lot with what we can right now. I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to conduct varsity and JV boys, girls soccer, field hockey, girls tennis, cross country, girls gymnastics, bowling, skiing, boys swimming, and winter track and field. We did that. We've done that right now. That's about 289 athletes have participated on these teams. We have another, and that 89 has already gone up since this morning when I edited this presentation. We're over 100 now registered for high-risk winter sports. And as I said earlier, hopefully those in the next few days, we will get that authorization and move forward with more kids. Our off-season workouts that I continue to speak about, we've run them for all the high-risk sports that have not granted the authorization. The coaches have come in and done what they are allowed to do from our Department of Health. So we have specific guidelines that we must follow. We do them. We have COVID protocols. Kids that are registered for a particular workout will fill out their COVID screener. They'll arrive on site for their practice, whether it's in the gymnasium, on the turf, at the Blue Mountain Middle School Gymnasium. Coaches take their temperatures before they enter, and then they begin their workout. We have allotted a maximum number of participants, and every day the workouts are sold out, we call them. They sell out every day. Whatever number we set, they sell out. So we have done a lot in terms of being successful with what we could from a COVID standpoint. So I think my next slide speaks to some of what our kids have said. And these words probably are the most meaningful in the presentation here. And I'll read them so people can at home if they want to hear. But Sarah Mandelkow is a senior cross country. She was a member of our Section 1 championship team. She's been a long time three-sport athlete on these sports. Sarah's going off to Sacred Heart University to continue her track and field career. So thanks to Section 1, we were able to have meets, and we ran each race like it was our last. But luckily, we made it to the end of our season with great success. Practices during the week and meets on the weekend added a sense of normalcy to my life, and it gave me something to look forward to, which had a positive impact on my mental and physical health. So it says a lot in that little snapshot there from Sarah. Kira Verada, again, another multi-sport senior athlete. Kira will be going off to Iona College to continue her girls lacrosse career. So she says, personally, this will be the last time I am eligible to participate in certain events, more specifically soccer and basketball, and cannot express my gratitude enough to be given this opportunity to finish it out for the last time. Although many obstacles have occurred over the past year, you have done so much to make this possible for us. This meant the world to all of us athletes, whether being a freshman or seniors. She doesn't mention girls lacrosse because she'll be continuing her career at the next level. And our final one, Frankie Godino is a senior football and baseball player. Frankie will be going off to Penn State next year in the fall. And I'd like to thank the Hennard administration, athletic director, and coaching staff for encouraging and allowing our football team to perform our limited practices during the pandemic. Although we have been limited to the size and length of time we practice, being able to get together with teammates has been a highlight of these uncertain times. We've been able to get together and focus on our goal of winning. We've been able to discuss our new Class B schedule and welcome our new players to our team. So I think what those kids say are really powerful for what we have been able to offer to them this year. So I'll go to the next one. I included some pictures here, so I'll just give a little summary of each of them. Our first one to the left is our talented senior athlete runner, Isolde McManus, our Con Ed Award winner and member of our Section 1 championship team. We were able to have our cross-country meets up at the Milton Sports Complex in Milton, New York, and it was as good of complex that was able to handle a cross-country meet as we had. We didn't have the opportunity to run at Croton Point Park or typical meets throughout the section that we've had in past years. So we were able to go here on most Saturdays, and that's her finishing up in her mask and following the guidelines, which makes me proud. Our middle picture is our coach DiNardo of our girls varsity soccer team. These are how our protocols work every day. That's how they enter the site to come in. And our final one is some of our JV boys soccer players on Officials Appreciation Day. We gave the two officials a nice hen hut gator that they can have for social distancing and for the future. I have some other pictures on the next slide. These were some of our senior award ceremony, senior recognition nights, our girls soccer senior ceremony, our boys soccer senior ceremony, and our field hockey senior ceremony. So being able to have all these during COVID is something that I'm really proud of. And I know for a fact this because the kids have been very, very conscientious of thanking everybody for offering this opportunity. So I'll go to the next slide. So our line increases, as in summary, our staff salary is contractual. The BOCES line, I talked the full year of officials contracts. There's a slight increase in BOCES programs. We do purchase some programs through BOCES. It gives us a better discount on them through their price. For instance, we use our impact concussion management program. We purchased that through BOCES. So these are some of the services that we get through them, and then our local live costs, like I had touched base with earlier. And our chaperone, some of the reasons, as I alluded to, why that line is an increase. So I'll go to the next slide. And we continue to be fiscally responsible with this. As I said, we took an inventory. We will save on what we can save for next year to hold that line. We'll have the internal reduction, some of the things that we can handle with the internal reduction in overtime, and with our equipment that we handle all of that internally with the athletic budget. And I always like to finish up with we still offer it. We have not deviated on our programs that we're offering. We have 31 different varsity programs. We offer a lot of diversity for our kids and our student athletes throughout the year. A lot of opportunities are there for them. From modified, with our one freshman team, our JV and varsity, we have 64 different teams. So there's ample opportunity for our student athletes. So, and I think my next slide is, as I always like, one of my favorite quotes from a longtime coach here who no longer is with us, and that's Coach Dutch Pritz. And it's something that has stuck with a lot of our teams. It's a great day to be a Sailor. So it's something that our kids take pride in every day, and it's something that I enjoy seeing them every day. And I think that our community is very appreciative of being able to get back out there on the fields. And hopefully in the next day or two, we get a lot more news so that we're out there in a full-time capacity. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to see the kids out there. I'm a student athlete myself, and she certainly appreciates being able to participate in sports. It's a great way to bring some semblance of normalcy to this really weird time. And
Yes,
as you could see, as you could see from those statements, it's very important to the kids as well. So thank you for keeping the program going. As we said earlier, I know that guidelines are changing every day, and you guys have been right on top of that. So we definitely appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions about the athletics budget tonight? All right, good job. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you.
All right, and Enrique is going to wrap up our presentation portion, talking about our debt and some opportunities where we've saved on debt and refinanced some loans. And so we'll bring that one up.
Good evening, everyone. This is the exciting presentation of the night. We're going to talk about our short-term and long-term debt next. So we're going to talk about our debt profile. Our debt profile is divided in three: capital debt, leases, and bonds. Capital debt is the money that we raise to pay for the capital projects that we have done since 2002. So as you can see, the first two, we refinanced them in 2012 and 14. The maturity date is next year. And if you remember a couple of years ago when we were planning to have a new capital project, we said that the maturity of the old capital project will help us because the tax, there will be no tax increase. We will just kind of have a revolver line from the old projects to the new projects. And as you can see, the two big numbers in payments for these years are coming from those two projects. Then in 2011, we had a small capital project. It was $4.65 million. In 2016, if you remember, we had a technology infrastructure and BOCES project. It was also a small one, $6.2 million. And the 2019 bank capital project, that is the one that we're finishing now. For the next couple of years, we're just going to pay interest on a small payment of principal, because I want to wait until our state aid ratio goes up. If you remember now, our state aid ratio is only 10%. I'm expecting it to go up to 40, 50, or even 60% after they close Indian Point. Next. Every year we do transportation bonds, and those are called bond anticipation notes. What we do every year is we buy new buses or any equipment that we need for the garage. And for example, here you see in the year 2016 and 17, the amount was $550,000. Last year it was only $295,000. So it really depends on the needs of our transportation department. And usually it's a 5-year repayment program. So every 5 years, we pay an old bond and we get a new bond. Next. Computer leases are the leases that we use on a yearly basis for the technology in our school, in each of our schools. So obviously all these, every 6 years, every school gets new computers. It's every 6 years because every 6 years we also upgrade our software, and that's a substantial amount. As you can see, software that we upgraded in 2016-17, the cost was $350,000. So this next, then we also have other debt for capital projects or other needs. The EPC, it's the energy performance projects that we did in 2011 and 12. It was a cost of $2.6 million. Our payments are $225,000 a year. The important part of this is that any payment that we pay goes against an audit, because the idea of the EPC is that with the money that we invested, we are saving in utilities. So every year we have an audit where someone comes in and checks that we were able to save the $221,000 that we paid in debt. And if not, the EPC contractor will pay us the difference. So far, every year, we far exceeded that number. When we did the 2011-12 EPC, our utilities were between power and gas and oil for the buildings. It was about $1.2 million. We're down to $600,000, even though back then we didn't have any smart boards. We didn't have the number of computers that we have today. So in that sense, the EPC has been very successful for us. And we're planning to do a new one to further reduce reduce expenses and increase savings. In 2011 and 2014, we had several substantial tax surcease due to the 2009 collapse of the real estate market. So we had a lot of major companies that have their offices in our district filing for tax surcease that we lost. And we had to issue money because we had to issue debt, because we didn't have the money to pay for that amount of money at that particular time. The 2011, this year is the last year, and for the 2014, the year 24-25 is going to be the last year, the maturity. Next. So here you have our total debt. For this year, we're going to pay in debt $5.1 million. Next year is about the same. And the following years will drop a little bit until it starts going back to 5.1 to the $5 million or around due to the new project. So that's all. Thank you. Any questions?
I don't have a.
Lisa has, wait, Lisa has a question?
Yeah, I was wondering something with the computer leases, Enrique. I know that we had to provide more devices to our students because of COVID. Did that have a big impact on that computer leasing program, or was it something we were already set up and we were close enough to the 1-to-1 ratio to be able to handle that?
Well, actually, in that sense, Lisa, what Laura decided to do was shift from desktops to Chromebooks. So we spent a little bit more money than expected in the last couple of years to go to the 1-to-1 ratio. But for a while, Laura's idea was to start shifting from desktops to Chromebooks. But she's here to tell you a little bit more about it.
Hi, everybody. So yes, the original plan a few years ago was every building was doing Chromebooks every year replacement. And then in that process, there's also a lot of hardware behind the scenes that needs to be replaced. With originally the projected plans for this current school year was that the Blue Mountain Middle School was going to get all of their devices replaced. So we were going to be replacing their desktop computers in the teachers' classrooms. We were going to be providing Chromebooks on a 1-to-1 basis, but to be kept in the classrooms. We were going to pull the desktops from the library, put Chromebook carts in there and iPad carts in there. We were just in the final phases of figuring all that out with the technology team before COVID happened. So then we quickly had a shift. So at that point, we did have the money set aside for the lease for those purposes. And then we quickly had to reallocate and figure out how many Chromebooks we did have. And yeah, we order very quickly, as you know, and hundreds and hundreds of Chromebooks to make sure that every student in the district had the ability to take a Chromebook home. I also had to provide laptops for teachers, which they currently did not have. They relied purely on their desktops prior to that. So now every single instructional teacher, counselor, anybody in those roles has a laptop assigned to them. So that's especially helpful when you see the middle school, the high school, they have the desktops, which are about 7 years old right now, but they're still making them work with web cameras attached to them, and then the laptop. And the elementary school teachers still are using their desktops, but they also use the laptops, especially on the days we go remote. We provided teaching assistants with Chromebooks so that they could support classrooms as well. So all of our plans sort of just got blown up. So now we're in the process of really figuring out what those next steps are and what the replacement cycle is and what it means for our district. Are we going to be a 1-to-1 school district? Are we going to continue to have students take devices to and from home and from school? And right now, the big push is the infrastructure. We have switches, everything that kind of controls our internet behind the scenes and our network is about 6-7 years old and needs to be replaced. So when it's my turn to present the budget, you'll see me and hear me talking a lot about that. Also replacement of all of our access points, which control the Wi-Fi in all of the buildings. So that's a lot of the next steps. And then trying to utilize the Chromebooks we did just purchase, even though a lot of Chromebooks last really only about 4 years. There's a licensing structure attached to them. We've pushed a lot of them to last longer, but the goal is to probably replace Chromebooks about every 4 years. So trying to reimagine what that life cycle looks like, almost on a 6-year plan of sorts. So I kind of answered that long-winded, but yes, we had planned on purchasing one way and then we quickly shifted. And so that shift is now making us kind of rethink how we move forward. But it's probably going to be about the same amount of money every year, just allocated to different places at different times.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Enrique. It was really great to hear that our energy plan has produced so much savings. That was one of the earlier initiatives that the district took on to try to keep our tax increases lower, and it's been very successful. So,
and that
excellent.
was not the only one. We also have the solar panels. We also have LEDs, and the next step is to change the whole lighting in the district to LEDs, and that will happen probably next year. We actually were in the midst of putting together an RFP. We just want to finish completely with this capital project, so we don't have two capital projects at the same time. But hopefully next year we'll see all LEDs in our district.
That's excellent. Okay, that concludes our presentations for tonight, correct, Joe?
Yeah, and if I could just say one thing, particularly Enrique's presentation tonight highlights just a small sample of really significant savings throughout our district that are not always visible, pun intended, with the solar lights, but are not always visible to community members, taxpayers, and especially kids. That these are big ticket items with huge savings, as you heard Enrique talk about the reduction in energy costs, while arguably our reliance on energy and Wi-Fi and computers plugging in is being greater and greater. And I share this because we always get to a point in our budget development when we engage the community around tax increases. And it's no secret that we are looking at more substantial tax increases in the next number of years than the 1.04% increase we had on average over the last 10 years. And it's savings like these and other projected savings, moving our entire our lighting system to LED and other areas that we save in very quiet ways, because the last resort for us is to have huge tax increases or to eliminate programs and services to kids. And I'm asked every budget year, well, what else are you doing? How else have you tightened the belt? You can't just rely on tax increases or take programs from kids. And we heard a lot of really concrete examples tonight. And I just hope we remember those, and I hope the public remembers them, because we engage in those studies and try to find those efficiencies so that we can reduce the burden on taxpayers and so we can keep our world-class programs. So it was a really short, but I think important presentation tonight. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks for highlighting that, Joe. So our next section is our policy reading. Our policy is on leaves of absence, and these are corrections to an existing policy or revisions to an existing policy. The reason that we're making these revisions is there has been a clarification or a change in the law. So we needed to correct some of the wording in this policy. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this policy? Actually, we have to start reading it at some point. So let's do a reading first. Would one of the policy committee members like to start the reading?
I will. Policy number 9116, leaves of absence. The board recognizes that leaves of absence are necessary for the employees.
Thank you. Yeah, so Greg, if you scroll down, there are two sections that are highlighted in red. And the first one is leaves of absence for screenings for, it used to say breast and prostate cancer. Now we've changed that to just screenings for cancer in general. And then towards the end of the section, the Family and Medical Leave Act, there has been some clarification on that act. So we're changing that to the district to comply with state and federal laws regarding family and medical leaves, which leaves this a little bit more flexible in case there are further changes, and also is stating that we're going to comply with the law. Does anybody have questions or comments about this policy before we have a vote on it? And I don't think we have to have a first reading and a second reading because this is a revision. We can just vote tonight unless there are questions or clarification that's needed for us to push it off for a second reading. All right, looks like we don't have any questions on this policy. Can I have a motion to approve the revisions as stated?
So moved.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Alrighty, that was the only policy we had for this evening. So our next section is our audience comments section. The guidelines for audience comments are available on the board docs site. So I'm not going to read those. And Carmen, did we have any comments for this evening that were emailed ahead of time or during the meeting?
Yes, hi, Carol. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, good. I want to make sure. Okay. Yes. I will read the email that she sent in. I would respectfully like to ask for the board to continue to take their time in considering their undertaking of moving to the Princeton plan for our school district. Getting ready for the sheer physical logistics, much less preparing the families, students and staff and faculty for the mental and emotional toll that switching to the Princeton plan might entail during a pandemic are not matters to be taken lightly or overlooked. In addition, before approval of moving forward with the Princeton plan timeline, can we please get clarification on the job status for all district teachers that are K through 12 certified and what that means for any and all losses of those positions? The intent for this question is to clarify that any job cuts that happen due to implementing the plan may not only impact the 3 elementary schools, but could potentially affect staff at BMS and the HS levels under the last hired, first fired policies. Respectfully, Rhonda Malhotra. We will put this into the board minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Rhonda. I think some of those comments or questions were already covered earlier this evening during the update, and certainly the other concerns you have will be addressed before any decisions are made moving forward about the Princeton plan. Were there any other comments? Just the one?
Just the one for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that brings us to board comments and new business. Lisa, you want to update us on the Capitol conference?
Sure. So the big thing that I wanted to talk about actually was that there's going to be opportunities to meet with our legislators who are our local ones, Senator Harcum and Sandy Galiff. And those meetings are happening on Friday. Well, they're coming up. And the issue is that it's our opportunity as a district to present to them sort of our story and what we want them to know about us and what our needs are. And Allie's going to come with me to one of them, and she's going to be on her own for another one. But we just wanted to really find out what the Board of Ed and what administrators would like us to really focus our comments on and our requests or asks from these representatives. So if there's any, I wanted to toss it open and just see if there was any thoughts from anyone on what we should be doing. The WestPut has given some guidance, kind of focusing on COVID costs. I don't know if we wanted to, talk about how much our COVID costs have increased because of the pandemic. There's, things about cost containment and trying to reduce the things that are required or that are, there's something called Wick's Law, and there's just a lot of different opportunities. And what we could really do is focus on what's most important to us and where we could really use some help. So thoughts, comments?
Lisa, I think that at this point, one of the most important parts is state aid. It's still No one is sure if they are going to cut any parts of aid. Without any doubt, one portion that will affect us is the fact that the state is saying that because we didn't use transportation last year, they cut all our transportation aid, or most of it.
I was
We
wondering
still
about
had to
that.
pay the salaries. We still had to maintain the buses.
Mm-hmm.
Really, our cost was exactly the same. Maybe we saved, I don't know, I'll say 15,000, 20,000 in gas and diesel. Besides that, there was no savings for us. The mechanics had to work every day. We paid all our drivers and chauffeurs. And usually we get about $180,000 in transportation aid. This might go down to 20,000.
Okay. Thank
We've
you.
also had to cover the costs for the federal leaves and now the New York State COVID leave. And so we're still very unsure if districts will be reimbursed for any of that. So, but since the start of the school year, the district has had to cover the cost of all of those leaves.
Right. Those are good options to focus on. Thank you for those suggestions. Is there anything else?
And I'll just mention the elephant in the room about Indian Point and its impact on us. We have direct and frequent conversations with Assemblywoman Gallup and Senator Harcum, as well as members of the governor's team. And in fact, we have a task force meeting tomorrow night. So they are well aware of our financial projections. They're aware of all the painstaking issues that we have to overcome in terms of trying to balance our budget and make sure that the community can continue to afford their tax bills. So we have very private and specific conversations with them as well. In fact, it was almost a year ago. It was the end of February last year. Enrique and I spent the day with Senator Harcum and his team and the governor's team reviewing our long-range forecasts. And a couple weeks later, we were in a pandemic and schools were closed. But they are uniquely aware of the issues that impact Hendrick Hudson specifically. So while there are a lot of policy decisions and a lot of impacts of those policies on our district as well as others, we have continued to advocate for our unique situation.
Sounds good. Thank you. And I had one other question or comment, I guess, too. This is about something different. Just with the snow days and how those are being determined. I was wondering if Mr. Hogwriter, if you could talk to us just a little bit about like the decision on Tuesday as to why we didn't go remote instead of.
Yeah, there's a misnomer that a school emergency day can just simply become a remote learning day. And that's a really big misnomer and a myth to dispel, because there still are very significant responsibilities the school district has if we choose to go remote. For example, the governor and the state education department began this year by saying you can go remote for COVID-related reasons, not because of traffic or because of road conditions, so on and so forth. And when the school district goes remote, the school district is still responsible for transporting students who have out of district placements. And that's not just kids that go to private or parochial school, it's special education students, it's students who have related services and who go to very specialized programs that oftentimes don't close or cannot go remote because of the nature of their programs. Also during remote days, those are remote days for students, and staff can report to schools if they wish, meaning teaching staff, but support staff, secretaries, and other departments would still normally report to work. That the only function that's remote is the teaching and learning function, but the back end of the district still needs to operate. The other factor I mentioned, related services. We have a number of students that can only receive their services live and in person, that they can't receive them remote. These may be students that have hearing and visual issues, students who may be in some very specific therapeutic placements, and that we still have a responsibility to deliver those services through our staff or through others, or as we said, to transport those students. So just because we're remote or there's a snow day doesn't mean that instructional programs completely cease and stop on a dime. Just so the board knows, we have around 100 students that we transport using 15 district vehicles to out-of-district placements. That could be a private and parochial school, but it could also be schools in the southern part of the county or in Rockland, or very specific programs that meet certain needs. So we have to take that whole situation into account. The other reason is connectivity. I don't know about many of you. I lost power 3 different times Tuesday morning. Our schools did lose power, had intermittent power, at least I know of a number of them. And all of our snow days are accounted for, meaning we pre-budget our snow days in advance in our school calendar, and that if we don't use enough snow days, we extend vacations or Memorial Day break. And if we use too many, more than 5, we take those away. So it's important to understand that if we had had a remote day on Tuesday, as successful or as inconsistent as it would have been because of power and connectivity issues, that would replace an in-person educational day that would take place later in the school year. So the way we plan our school calendar, and Margaret leads that initiative and is working with the committee as we speak, our district budgets every snow day in advance, and other districts do not. Other districts, for every snow day they have to add on one more instructional day to make sure they meet the state threshold. So there's a lot of nuance that goes into this. You heard Enrique mention earlier about an interest in making sure state aid is fulfilled. Every year we have to demonstrate to the state that students were in school at least 180 days and had requisite clock hours or seat time. And we're not certain right now, because the guidance is unclear, is whether or not remote days that are not COVID related are going to count toward seat time and count toward our minimum standard. And we don't want to be surprised next year that instead of having emergency days, which are approved, that we had, instead of snow days, we used remote days, and then we are not eligible for state aid in those days. So some districts do it differently because they have different agreements with their unions, and some just account for their time differently in their school calendar. But it's not as simple. It's more nuanced than the roads are too bad to travel, so everyone just stay home. We will when we feel that we can, but we were one of many districts that didn't feel comfortable doing it and had too many other reasons why it wasn't viable at that time.
Thank you very much.
I've learned after 8 years on the board that every time I think a decision is like intuitively obvious and goes one way, there are so many other factors that I'm not even aware of that are playing into that decision. It's mind-boggling. So thanks for the clarification. Does anybody else have any comments? I have one more, but I don't want to jump on anybody else's time. All right, so I just wanted to point out that there have been some website changes to the board tab that have been long overdue, and we're very happy to see them being implemented. So if you go to our board website now, there is information on what it means to be a board member, what responsibilities are, how to run for a board trustee seat, with some links to some information on that topic as well. And we're trying to make it as user friendly as possible. So check out the new board tab site, please, if you want some information on that. And Carmen, when are those packets going to be available? Do you know?
Hi, Carol. They're available now. So if anybody would like to email me or call the district office, they're available.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of our meeting. Can I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I hit the wrong button there.
Our next meeting will be after the winter break on Wednesday, February. What February is it? Hang on, I
24th?
gotta pull my calendar up. The 24th or the 28th, something like that. The 24th, Wednesday, February 24th. Okay, we hope to see you there.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.